Welcome to the Beam Show, the show where we discuss topics on mental health, well-being and personal development. We are your hosts, Lianne and myself, Tom Weaver, and these conversations come from our experience in training, the therapy room and our personal experience. Today, we're going to talk about therapeutic coaching and what it is. This is a question that we get asked quite a lot. So I'm going to start off straight away by asking Lianne, what is therapeutic coaching?
Hiya, Tom. So therapeutic coaching is the term we came up for how we help our clients, particularly on a one-to-one basis. And it really kind of encompasses the fact that anyone that works for Beam isn't just a therapist or just a coach. It's that we have a whole toolkit really of qualifications and skills, background, diversity, and the way that you and I and the other therapeutic coaches that we work with love working with clients is to help them deal with some of the challenges of the past, to help them overcome trauma, grief, anxiety, panic, all of those things that we work with on a day-to-day basis, but then also to coach them into being a better version of themselves. So we like to blend the two tools together to hopefully get the best out of them.
That makes it really easy to understand. I've also heard you explain it before in the past that it's like we're like integrative therapists.
Yes.
And I also like that as well, because it's not so much that people are coming for a particular, a particular type of therapy. It's that we're going to use everything we got
exactly
to help that person. Because
I think it really helps us to adapt to the person rather than try and make the person fit the therapy. And I know definitely when I started with sort of EFT, which I know we'll talk about in a moment, and hypnotherapy and NLP. And I know there were times where, particularly in my very early days, where I was kind of using the tool and thinking, I think there would be a better tool for this client. Whereas now, I've been doing it 12 years. I am really confident in my capability to help someone. And I recognize that not only what might work for one person might not work for another, but also it doesn't always work for the same person in different circumstances. And I think I've certainly experienced that personally, where I've gone through a challenge and something that was really effective for me before doesn't seem to work as well, and I need to use or adapt it. And I think that allows us to be really responsive to the individual that we're working with.
Absolutely. So what happens when I'm asking like an obvious question, or sort of know the answer, but what happens when someone comes to us and says, I heard you do EFT, I want that.
Yeah.
And because I'll let you answer.
So that's quite common. Frequently, and it is changing, but certainly when I first started, people generally saw therapy as a last resort anyway. And people frequently will come to therapy because my friend had EFT, it worked amazing for them. I think I need the same thing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does kind of neglect the fact that we're all individuals.
Yeah.
And so I'll always explain to a client what any therapy modality is, but what I generally tell my clients is throughout our time working together, we will use lots of different therapies. And a lot of the time you won't know I'm using a therapy on you because it's just blended into a conversational approach as well. And clients generally, once I explain that, are much happier to have a little buffet of all of the therapies rather than just a main meal of one.
It seems like the best approach with helping someone. If you went to a trade and you were like, I want this done. Well, you're trusting, that professional's expertise and experience to know that you might need a combination of things to get the job done. So like if someone, people come to us quite a lot for grief and loss. So if someone was coming to us because they had lost, they'd recently lost a relative, like how would you sort of deal with that?
So tricky, because again, there's not one size fits all. Generally with grief, and I'm going to speak in really general terms here, generally with grief, what I will always say to a client is I cannot take away the pain of losing that person. And actually what we usually end up talking about is almost the fact that we don't really want that pain taken away to some degree as well. But when you work with a therapist that is helping you through grief, what should happen is they can help you process any trauma associated with that. Quite often when we've lost a loved one, perhaps we've been involved in seeing some images or having some experiences that aren't very nice. And so therapy can absolutely help you process that so it stops haunting you or becoming the overriding memory of the loved one. We can also help move through grief, so in a really caring and supportive, empathetic way. But the pain of losing a loved one is something we all, if we're lucky enough to love someone, are going to experience. And we've got a free resource on the website, which I know you can put a link up, but what I often use with grief is this ball in the box analogy. It's like, grief doesn't go away. We don't get on with it. We don't forget. It doesn't get easier. But what does happen is over time, our life gets bigger. And so the grief doesn't change, but because our life is bigger, it's less consuming. And that really is the goal with moving through healthy grief.
Yeah. I mean, grief's such a huge topic. And I know that our next show, we're lined up and we're going to be talking about grief in much more detail. Not only our experiences, but how we have got through it, how we have sought other professional support for that as well. So I think that's going to be a couple of really good and interesting shows. And we're going to answer lots of common questions about grief. But it's really important that people know how we deal with these situations. And it's important for people that are thinking about therapeutic coaching to know that everyone is different. And it was really important that you mentioned that, because if I lost my nan, it's different to if you lost your nan, and it's different to someone else if they lost their nan. Everyone responds differently, and it's how we respond to it that is the different part, because we're all different as well.
And our relationships are different. There's no two relationships the same. But grief also tends to compound. So if you lose someone this year, but you'd lost someone 5 years ago, it tends to bring back that previous grief as well. So I could talk about grief much more, but I know it's almost a separate podcast, so we won't.
Absolutely. I wanted to sort of bounce back onto, you started talking about EFT, and to those who have no idea what EFT is, what is it?
So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's also known as tap-in technique, and it is a therapy that I've been using. It's one of the first therapies I ever learned, actually, for over a decade. And it's really, really simple, which is what I love in a lot of the therapies that we use. I love a therapy that I can teach to the client and they can use it themselves, so they have autonomy with it. And it is really effective. And the principle of EFT is tapping on certain acupressure points within the body to release basically stored energy, stored emotions, to allow it to flow more freely. Works brilliantly for things like phobias. Use it quite a lot actually in emotional eating. Is really useful for that. It's a great way of kind of processing through layers of things that we're carrying. And as I say, it's really simple.
When you say like tapping, like what do you mean? Do you need like a special tool, or do you have to do it on the person, or they do it themselves? Like what is tapping?
What's tapping? So tapping is you do it to yourself. So
Yeah.
none of the therapies I use are hands-on, because I want the client to feel incredibly comfortable. So I teach the client to do it themselves. So you would generally use 2 or 3 fingers, and I would guide the client through certain points that they would tap on their body.
Yeah.
To start to release any kind of built up or stagnant energy, to help them release any intense emotions. It's really good for just letting really intense emotions go. So you just use 2, 3 fingers and just tap about 10 times. And then you move on to the next one, and we just keep doing it as a routine. It's really relaxing. Most people get weird sort of tingles when they do it, and their energy tends to change. So your energy tends to feel much more positive and invigorated once you've finished the whole session. It can be really emotional as well.
Yeah. Okay. Like there's because I know that, times that we've been in the airport waiting for a flight, and if you just because it's a great place to people watch, and people do things that are all out of the ordinary at airports anyway. So I've witnessed people doing that before getting on a plane. So is that something, especially now this time of the year when people are going on holidays, is that something that you can do to get over fear of flying?
It is. It's really great for phobias. And if you do, I think it's the British Airways and Virgin fear of flying course, they use EFT within those courses.
Oh, wow.
So it's really common to see people in an airport just tapping away. Tapping's quite discreet. So if you weren't looking for it, you might just think it's a normal soothing behavior that someone has. But it's so useful for just calming your anxiety.
Yeah, I love it, and it's really good to, for those who don't know what it is, EFT doesn't sort of even if you because it's emotional freedom technique, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So even that doesn't really explain what it is you have to do.
No.
Which brings me to something else that we do called havening, which also doesn't explain, it doesn't explain what it is. So can you explain a little bit more about havening?
Yeah, so havening, the term havening really comes from what a haven means, like this safe place. And havening is something that we've been using. We both got qualified roughly the same time, so we've been using it nearly 2 years. And to say that it changed how we were as therapists is a real understatement. It's an incredible therapy tool, again, which you don't have to touch the client. You teach the client how to do it. They can use it themselves. They can use it when they're worried about something at 3 a.m. They don't need you with them to use it. However, in terms of using it to process difficult emotions, trauma, grief, those sorts of intense things, when you use havening to work with a therapist, working with a therapist, it can provide really profound changes. And it's based upon using what's known as the havening touch. So there's 3 different havening touches. So one is stroking from your shoulders to your elbows. And just as you're talking, and the havening practitioner will guide you through different conversations, you might talk about the issue, you might not talk about the issue, and you just apply that touch while you're doing it. Another one is, this is my favorite one, rolling your hands together. So you just gently roll your hands together, almost as if you're rolling a piece of plasticine into a ball. And then the third one is stroking across the forehead and down the face. My least favorite one, and a hindrance when people have glasses. They don't tend to like that one either. They all do the same thing, and essentially, in really simple terms, is when we apply the Havening touch, what neuroscience tells us and shows us through research is that we send the brain into what's known as a delta wave state. And a delta wave state is really relaxing. It's when we're really chilled. When we're intently learning, we're in a delta wave state. So as children, we're in delta a lot. But it's also where we could go if we were kind of absorbed in something. So it's a great way to stop the monkey babbling mind and get us into that relaxed state. And essentially what Havening does is it helps the brain to maybe disconnect some traumas that we might have. The way that I love describing Havening is that it's like water. So you can use water to put out a fire. So if you've got trauma, if you've got anxiety, if you've got panic, if you've got grief, if you've got a lack of confidence, we can use Havening as water to put out that fire. But Havening can also be used as water to grow seeds. So we can use it to help people feel more confident, to feel more comfortable flying, to feel happier in their skin. So it's got this wonderful diversity, which sits so well with therapeutic coaching, because the putting out the fire is more the therapy, the growing the seed is more the coaching.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we use it in different ways. And I know that you help it a lot with sort of putting out the fire. And some of the, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, it's all about growth and building that confidence. So it's I love how it can be used in those different ways. And
you prefer using it like that, yeah?
What's that? Sorry.
You prefer using it like that to help grow the seeds?
To boost and to sort of encourage growth. And I've seen some sort of great results when it's come to that as well. If anyone's interested about sort of seeing what a Havening session might look like, if you hang around to the end of this show, we will be doing a live Havening distraction demo. So you'll be able to find that in the chapters or in the comments, and you'll be able to jump straight to that if that's what you come for. So yeah, hang around for that. That will be at the end. But we've still got plenty more different therapy styles that we're going to talk about. And one of them is NLP. And I know that, I mean, we're both NLP practitioners. You've been doing it for a long time. And it was the first one that I got into when, when I joined Beam about 5 years ago. And it was when I realized that I wanted to start helping others. This was a great foundation in being able to, help people with different things.
Exactly. So what's NLP then?
Oh, NLP. I was going to say why I enjoy doing it so much, but okay. So NLP is something called neuro-linguistic programming.
Catchy.
It is very catchy. So you can see why they've shortened it to NLP. And essentially, what that is we're looking at changing our behaviour and our thoughts. So the way that I first found love with NLP was actually probably, how old am I? Probably almost 18 years ago when I was a smoker. And this might be something that people are quite familiar with, using NLP or hypno or stuff like that for stopping smoking. And I'd never heard of it before. And now, after understanding a bit more about it, I know that he used combinations of NLP and timeline therapy, which is something that's often worked alongside NLP. But so I went in, and it was probably about an hour and a half session, and the guy told me to bring my cigarettes and a lighter along with me. And I thought this is going to be a funny session, but it was just how he worked with his clients, and it's something that I've always remembered because I haven't actually smoked since. So I went through the session, and I basically, what I did was reprogrammed my thinking about why I was smoking. and how I wanted to see my future. And it got me to jump between sessions, between different parts of my life, and view how I wanted it and how I wanted to change. And this I was in such awe that this is what I wanted to do. And since then, since learning NLP, I've been able to help many people stop smoking, and now more so vaping. So I'm very, very passionate about stopping people vaping, but that comes along with breathwork as well. But yeah, so I mean, that's a very
amazing. I mean, you could see the little spark in your eye when you talked about vaping, which I guess is going to be a whole separate podcast.
It is, yeah. I'm not one of those people, mind, that, if I see someone smoking, I go up to them and wag my finger at them. If people want to smoke, that's fine, but if people want to stop, then there are ways that we can help them do it.
What I love about NLP is a lot of the times clients won't necessarily even know you're using it.
Yeah.
Because it's just about language and perhaps getting people to think a little bit differently. And they NLP combines so well with the other therapies that we do between us. So I'll often do havening with NLP or EFT with NLP, and again, people won't necessarily know that.
Yeah.
But it just really strengthens that approach. Okay, so we've got NLP. You, when you did NLP, also did something called timeline therapy. So what's timeline therapy?
Well, this is actually one of the only ones that is pretty self-explanatory. The rest have all got crazy acronyms or words that are associated with it. But timeline therapy is, we're looking at it. I mean, it's using NLP as well, so it's never really used on its own. So when we do timeline therapy, we're looking into the past, we're looking into the present and the future, and how we can change our perspective of either the past. We're not forgetting that something has happened. We're not trying to change a memory, but we're trying to view it in a different light. So if you've had a negative experience, there may be ways that you can remember it in a way that will serve you better today. And the same within the present. If you want to, if you want to motivate yourself to do something in the future, whether that is stopping something negative or creating something positive, then we can use the present and the future to be able to create these healthy habits in a way that serves us, in a way that creates a positive change. So by doing this, imagine, it's a very quick example. I'll keep it along the same sides of smoking or vaping, because we spoke about that. But imagine that today you are a smoker, but you know that you want to stop it. So what we'll do is we'll in a very simple way, we'll take us now and we'll plonk ourselves in the future. This may be a month, this may be a year's time, this may be when we're 50, and we'll focus intensely on what it looks like in the future. And that picture will not contain cigarettes. And that's what we're working towards. And that's a very simple way of looking at it, but it is it's a way of forecasting what we want in our life. Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of on that principle of whatever you focus on is what grows. Yeah. So I know in hypnotherapy, you never say, I don't smoke, I'm a non-smoker, because your brain doesn't hear the negative. So your brain just keeps hearing smoking, smoking, smoking. And it's that, the other analogy is when you're kind of driving on the motorway and there's been an accident on the other side of the road. If you look at it, your hands start going towards it. And then so commonly there's a secondary accident because of the first accident, because people would rubbernecking. And it's that idea of, okay, if I'm focused on, I've got to give up smoking, I've got to stop smoking, then really what I'm doing is just reminding myself about smoking. Whereas if I focus on being a really healthy person that can climb a mountain or can walk upstairs or play with the grandkids, and I can feel how healthy that feels, then my brain has a map to go towards it, rather than focusing on the very thing I don't want.
Absolutely. And a lot of it is reframing those automatic behaviors, because you were talking about driving, and you know, a really good example of automatic behavior is you see a police car on the motorway and you'll brake without, you won't have even, you know, it's an automatic behavior, and you'll slow down because you don't want to get a ticket. And you don't really have to think about that. It's just something you do, along with driving as well. So yeah, there's so many ways that these different types of therapies work.
So one of the other therapies that we use, and probably the one that I think you're best known for, is one that potentially people won't see as a therapy kind of tool, and that's breathwork. Now, we've both done a lot of different qualifications in breathwork, some the same, some individual separate ones. So I'd love to get your perspective first on breathwork, and especially how that fits into therapeutic coaching.
Absolutely. I love helping people breathe better. It has come from a passion of mine, from wanting to rebuild my lungs from being a smoker, to understanding how to get through COVID easier, and childhood asthma and snoring and all those sorts of things that are related to breathwork. Our breathing is affected all the time. If we're anxious, our breathing's changed. If we're stressed, whether we're about to sit down and have a meal, our breathing is such an important factor in all of it. And when we talk about breath work, we're talking about how it's not like one of those sessions where you sit down and you breathe heavy for an hour, and you know, like people might be familiar with like the Wim Hof experience. That's not really what we're trying to teach. We are teaching people how to breathe all of the time. When you're asleep, when you're driving your car, when you're in a meeting, then what we're doing is we are teaching techniques to improve how we breathe. And it is something that has changed my life, and I know it's changed your life as well, and also the people that we work with. People have learned a skill they didn't know that they necessarily needed, but now once they've learned it, you know, the amount of snorers that now no longer snore, or the amount of people that have been able to recover from long COVID by using breathing exercises, or improve lung function after being smokers, it is something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I will continue to help people with breathing better for the rest of my life. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because your breath is always with you,
yeah,
and it's changed by every experience you have, I always find it quite empowering to the client when you say, okay, well, do this breathing technique, because again, you teach it to the client once, they have it with them forever. And it's so simple because, okay, if I teach someone an EFT routine, they might not want to sit on the middle of the train and do that, or even the havening. But teaching someone a breathing technique, they can do it in the middle of the train. They can do it in the middle of a meeting. They can do it on an aeroplane.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to really to talk about breathing is to do a very quick demonstration. And this is one that is suitable for everyone, and it will bring a little bit of calm and focus within about 30 seconds to anyone that does it. So right now, just if you are you're sat, the only exception is if you're driving. So you know, if you're safe to do so, if you're sat at a desk or, you know, moving around, just stop for a minute and just adjust your body. So straighten up that spine, roll back those shoulders, because when we do that, opens up our capability to breathe. And we're going to keep our mouth closed. And what we're going to do is we're going to breathe in through the nose, nice, slowly and controlled. And then we're going to breathe out through the nose, but we're going to extend that exhale for as long as possible. And when you're ready to do so, breathe in again through the nose. Nice, slowly controlled. And then breathe out through the nose. extend that exhale. And just one more time, breathe in through the nose. And then out through the nose. Extending that out. Now return to some normal breathing. That was 30 seconds.
Beautiful. It just slows everything down.
It does.
It just grounds you. And if you're dealing with particularly anxiety, panic, grief, all of those heavily impact your breathing and then become a vicious circle, which comes first.
Yeah.
And I'll frequently say to clients, you know, sometimes it's really hard to change how we're thinking. So in the beginning, I'll often work with a client's physiology. Let's change what's going on in your body, because that will start to change how your brain feels, rather than trying to change the brain and do it that way. And breathing is always the first point of call.
Yeah, it's so passive. Like what we do. So when we start to take control of it, the body notices.
Yeah.
You know, and once you start to learn about this, then you can get early signals to how your body is going to respond, how your brain is going to be in that moment.
Totally.
And when we change our breath, we can control the situation. So if that is you're scared of flying and you're sat in the chair and it's about to take off and you're breathing through your mouth, and you can just feel that, and you feel that like sort of anxiety and stress sort of really coming over, and you just close your mouth and you start breathing through your nose. It makes that situation easier to handle.
Totally. And I'm sure we will definitely do more podcasts on breathing.
Oh, absolutely. That's without question. We will definitely be doing more on functional breathing. We'll probably dive more into the science of that, and we'll be talking about female breathing as well, which is something that you cover. Would you like to just run us through? Give us a quick summary of why female breathing is different.
Yeah, because I mean, the most common thing we get when we tell people about breathing and being, you know, using breath a lot is, how can I be breathing wrong? I'm alive. So that's the most common thing you get. And it's like, well, just like eating, exercising, drinking, you can do it well, you can do it badly, and it has a big impact on your overall well-being. When I then say about female breathing, I kind of get, how can women and men breathe differently? It doesn't even make sense, but it makes a lot of sense. And really, basically, men run on a 24-hour cycle, which is our circadian cycle. And their dominant hormone, testosterone, kind of guides that. And it generally is fairly stable. If you're healthy, if you're looking after yourself, that's generally very stable. And so a man's breathing pattern, assuming he's healthy and fit and well, will be fairly stable. Women have that 24-hour cycle, but we also have roughly a 28-day cycle as well. And what we know from research, and I can't even say it's recent research because the first study was 1915, 1916, so it's been around over 100 years, is that hormones, particularly estrogen and progesterone, have a huge impact on our breathing. And progesterone is the hormone that we produce either when we get pregnant or at the end of our period. So the last 2 weeks of the month, if you're on a 4-week cycle. And progesterone is a respiratory stimulant. So as it spikes, it starts to make us overbreathe. So our breathing pattern at the start of the month is much faster as we get towards the end. And then as progesterone starts to crash, it actually causes us to be more sensitive to CO2, which is the primary stimulant for breathing. So I feel like I've got too much CO2 in my body. So again, I start overbreathing. And if we just do a few seconds of, let's do some over breathing, and let's make it really bad. So let's breathe through our mouth as well. So if we just sit here and we go, you see the shoulders, but very quickly you start to feel anxious, right? You start to feel, whew, like the brain is saying, okay, where's the danger? What do I need to do?
I mean, immediately your heart speeds up.
Your heart speeds up, exactly. And so females tend to have this happening, certainly in the very last week of their period, where they might suffer with premenstrual symptoms. They might get pre-period anxiety. They might have trouble sleeping. They might snore more. And this is even worse when we go into perimenopause and our hormones are all over the place, fluctuating loads and loads. And so educating a female about that happening in their body is a game changer, and I could talk about it all day. But using that when I'm working with a client who perhaps is a female client who's struggling with, say, anxiety and panic attacks, we can very quickly map if there's a pattern to that. And often there's a hormonal pattern to that, as a hormonal factor. Even when we're working with a client who perhaps is having relationship difficulties, we can map if there's a hormonal component to that. And then coming back to the breathing and managing the breathing, it isn't a cure, but absolutely taking control of our breathing mitigates all of those symptoms. So super passionate about it.
I can hear it. And it's been something that I've been really grateful to learn about as well, not only for my passion about breathwork and understanding, you know, how that affects us all individually, but also to, you know, for a lot of men, women are a mystery. And, and I think understanding this element of how females are different to men is really, really important. So if you are a fan of listening to the show and you're a man, when we come to doing female breathing, don't skip it. You will learn so much and it will be so useful.
Yeah, definitely. It is just a game changer.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we've covered so many of the different types of therapies that we're using, and as I promised earlier on, we are going to do a havening for distraction havening demonstration. So you're going to guide me through it. And yeah, just is there anything that anyone needs to sort of know about this? Or
so this is a lovely little havening technique to use if you're feeling anxious, if your mind's really busy, if you've become emotionally upset. It's really simple. So we're not using it to provide therapy. We're using it to downregulate our nervous system to get us to feel calmer. So what I will always encourage clients to do is, if you are feeling activated, if you're feeling angry, upset, whatever it is, to recognize that and then perhaps give it a score out of 10 before you start. So hopefully we're all really chilled and relaxed here. I know you and I are pretty chilled and relaxed, but let's just kind of check in on ourselves and ask ourselves out of 10 how, and you can choose anxious, angry, upset, worried, do I feel? Okay. So we just check in on ourselves. And then we're going to apply the havening touch. So I mentioned there's 3 different ones. It is entirely up to you which one you use. So Tom's demoing them like my glamorous assistant. So there's the down the face one, there's from the shoulders to the elbows, and then there are the rubbing the palms together. So you can choose whichever one you want, and you can play with them if you want to, so you can go back and try a different one. And I am going to then just kind of use Tom as an example, and I'm going to ask Tom to list 3 countries that are in Europe.
France, Spain, and Germany.
Okay. And then 5 4-legged animals.
A dog, a cat, an alpaca, a giraffe, an elephant. Is that enough?
I think that's 5, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, what about 4 things that are green?
A frog, an apple, grass, pear,
yeah,
and a grape.
Okay, that's 5, but brilliant.
Okay.
And then can you spell happiness backwards?
S, S,
Perfect. And then can you count to 10 in another language?
I'll try.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Perfect. And now I want you to take in a nice deep breath through your nose. And let it go. And then you can just pause when you're ready. I want you to just check in with yourself and notice how you're feeling.
Feeling nice and calm.
Mm-hmm.
And my hands are tingling, and also my arms.
Yeah. So we've got that connection, we've got that energy going, just changing our mental and physical state really isn't difficult. It's not rocket science, but it is really, really powerful and effective. What I often ask clients to do when they're using this themselves, because it's hard to like quiz yourself in the way that I just quizzed you. So what I often encourage them to do is to do the self-havening, so apply the touch constantly whilst using the alphabet to list things. So list animals going through A to Z, or list foods, places. Doesn't matter what it is, but going A to Z gives you long enough for your brain to get distracted without coming back to the problem. And it also gives you the opportunity to stay on topic. Otherwise, our brains wander and try and bring us back to the problem.
I think it's also really important to notice that, or to mention that, you know, if like, I don't know, if it was something you were really anxious about flying, don't go through and then list loads of cities or places in Europe or something, because then your brain might wander and think, oh yeah, I went to Berlin. Oh, that was a terrible flight.
Yeah.
The brain is very quick to make those connections. And the same with, if you were, if it is associated, so
sorry, a bird nearly flew into the window.
We definitely won't edit that. It's very, very, very important to not choose something that you're going to distract yourself with that is associated to the problem. I just wanted to jump in and say that.
Absolutely. I need to haven myself now because a magpie just flew into my windowsill. Well, he didn't hurt himself, but he came.
That's good to know.
Came into my room a little bit too much.
So one final thing, if someone is interested in therapeutic coaching, how do they book? What do they need to do?
Okay, well, I think what's worth saying is, who do we work with first?
Okay, yeah.
Because, I get that question a lot. Like, the fact that we have loads and loads of therapy tools means that we're pretty skilled working with a whole range of problems. There are absolutely some issues that we will signpost to other people who are more expert than us in a certain topic. So we will never take on a client that we don't believe we can help. And we really love working with people who have had enough, who are motivated to say, I just don't want to do this anymore. And I'll frequently say to a client, going to therapy 1 hour a week, a month, whatever it is lovely. But if you're not making any changes outside of that, then not a lot is going to change. We're not magical, unfortunately. We can't wave a magic wand and make it all different. So a client really that works well with us is someone who will do the homework. And we love doing that. We'll teach you these tools and techniques, and then you just start using them, playing with them, and being okay with the fact that one didn't really work for me, this one works really well, and using that. So generally the topics we work on are really broad, so I won't list all of those, but it's really working with anyone that has just had enough and is motivated to say, I've got to do something different.
Yeah, that's really important as well, because if say you did want to quit smoking or vaping, and it wasn't really your choice, but your partner's been nagging at you to stop it, but you don't really want to stop. then that's not going to work for you.
No.
It has to be a personal choice. It has to be something that you want to do, and you've either had enough or you want the future to be different.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so right. It's got to be your personal drive, not feeling like someone's told us we've got to go and sort yourself out. It isn't that. It's not just buying something from the shop. There's a lot of work in therapy, and you've got to be ready for it. And sometimes we're not, and that's totally okay. So yes, the way to work with us, I mean, both you and I, as much as we possibly can, offer a free 30-minute discovery call where we'll just hop onto Teams with someone, have a chat. That is absolutely where we connect with each other. We work out what your issue is, what you're hoping to get resolved. There and then, if we think we're not the right people, we will signpost you. So we may well say, actually, I think you'd be much better with this kind of person for this reason. And we'll do intros where we're able to. But if we believe that we're the right person for you, it's really important that that client feels that as well. So we will talk about the fact that you get much more from therapy if you feel comfortable with the therapist.
Yeah.
So we will say to the client, look, this is how we work. This is what we would do with you. And then most of the time, actually, just follow up with an email and then leave it to the client if and when they want to book. We never do, you must have X amount of sessions. Our goal is always actually to get you out of needing us as quickly as possible. So we like to kind of be there as a safety net for you, but we like to empower the client to have the tools that they don't feel they need us frequently. So there's never, you've got to book X amount of sessions. There's never kind of chasing or any of that. You're in control, and even our booking system actually gives you total control, so you can schedule the appointments to work for you. And that's it, really. You can work with us online or face-to-face. So we have this lovely office here in Cardiff where clients travel from all over to come and see us face-to-face, because some people prefer that. But we also work with clients all around the world using video call. It's totally normal. We were doing it before COVID, but certainly since COVID, it is totally normal for us to do that as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, I think we have probably covered everything when it comes, well, everything that we can within this time when it comes to explaining more about therapeutic coaching. We hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. And if there are any topics that you would like us to cover, we have lots that we have planned for future episodes. But if there is any that you really want us to talk about soon, then drop us an email. There will be a link to contact us in the description. There'll be links for other things that have been mentioned throughout the show, but also a link to our free 30-minute booking session as well. So that is free for anyone, whether you want to come and see Lianne or myself, and we'll be able to help you more on a one-on-one basis then. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.